The shuttle landed on the metal platform of Prime with a soft hiss. Morgan stepped out into the cold morning air and looked up at the massive building in front of her. The Galactic Military Academy stood like a mountain of steel and glass, reaching up toward the purple sky. Hundreds of windows reflected the light of the twin suns. This was the most famous military school in the entire galaxy, and she was about to walk through its doors. Was 22 years old. She had brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail and eyes that seemed to notice everything. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 120 pounds. By human standards, she was average. By the standards of the species waiting inside that building, she was tiny. She picked up her single bag and walked toward the entrance. The registration hall was filled with cadets from across the coalition, stopped just inside the door and took a moment to study them. There were tall beings with blue skin and 4 muscular arms. Their species was known for speed and coordination. There were massive creatures that stood 9 feet tall with natural armor covering their bodies like plates of bone. They were the warriors of the galaxy, feared on every battlefield. And there were slender beings with pale skin and large dark eyes. They could read minds and sense emotions. Nothing could be hidden from them. Was the only human in the room. She walked to the registration desk where an officer was processing new arrivals. He looked down at her and then at his screen. Then he looked at her again. His 4 arms stopped moving. "There must be an error," he said. "Humans are not accepted into the combat division." Handed him her documents. "Check again, please." He checked. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "These are valid. You were accepted through the diversity program." He paused and something that might have been pity crossed his face. "Good luck, Cadet. You will need it." She took her room assignment and walked into the dormitory section. The whispers started before she reached the end of the first corridor. "Is that a human? What is she doing here? This must be a joke." Heard every word, she kept walking. Her room was small but clean. 2 beds, 2 desks, 2 storage units. Her roommate was already there, a female named Senna. She was sitting on her bed and watching with those large, dark eyes that could see into your soul. "I requested a single room," Senna said. Her voice was soft and musical. "They told me there were none available." "I will try not to take up too much space," replied. She set her bag on the empty bed and began to unpack. Senna watched her for a long moment, could feel the reaching out with her mind trying to read her emotions. She let her. She had nothing to hide. "You are calm," Senna said finally. "That is strange. Most beings are nervous on their first day." "I have been preparing for this for a long time." "Preparing to fail." Looked at her roommate. "No." The first week was difficult. Every day brought new tests designed to measure the cadets against each other. Speed tests, strength tests, reflex tests, combat simulations. Finished last in almost every category. The numbers were recorded and displayed for everyone to see. By the end of the week, her name was at the bottom of every list. The other cadets found this hilarious. A named made it his personal mission to remind everyone how weak the human was. He was the largest cadet in the program, nearly 10 feet tall with armor plates that looked like they could stop a laser blast. His family had produced warriors for 15 generations. He had never met a being he could not crush. "Look at her arms," he said loudly in the training hall one morning. His friends laughed along with him. "My children could break them without trying." Was lifting weights nearby. The bar she was using held less weight than what used for warm-up. She did not look at him. She did not respond. She simply continued her exercises with steady, measured movements. "She does not even react," one of his friends said. "Maybe humans are too stupid to understand insults." "Or too weak to do anything about them," replied. This continued for 3 weeks. Every day brought new mockery. Every training session brought new humiliation. Was knocked down in sparring practice. She was left behind in running drills. She was pushed aside in tactical exercises. The instructors began to look at her with the same pity the registration officer had shown. Commandant called her to his office after she was knocked unconscious for the second time. He was an ancient with a face like cracked stone and eyes that had seen 1,000 wars. "Your instructors recommend transfer to a support division," he said. "Given your physical limitations, this seems wise." Stood at attention. Her face was still bruised from the sparring match. "I decline, sir. This is not entirely your choice. I have not failed any test, sir. I have not broken any rule. I am still standing." Studied her. He tried to read her mind but found it strangely difficult. Not blocked exactly, just layered, like looking at a lake and not being able to see the bottom. "Survival is not success," he said. "No, sir, but it is a start." He dismissed her without approving the transfer. He was not sure why. That night sat alone in her room while Senna was at dinner. She opened the locked case she had brought from Earth. Inside were not weapons or technology. Inside were papers, thousands of pages covered in handwriting so small it was almost impossible to read. 6 years of research, 6 years of analysis, 6 years of preparing for exactly this moment. She pulled out a file labeled Combat Patterns and began to review it for the 100th time. The combat trials would begin in 4 days. Everyone expected her to be eliminated in the first round. The betting pools gave her 0% chance of winning a single match. Smiled to herself in the empty room. They had no idea what was coming. Senna returned later and found asleep with her notes spread across the bed. They gathered them carefully and set them aside without reading them, but she noticed the labels on the folders. Every species at the academy had its own file. For the first time, Senna wondered if she had underestimated her human roommate. 3 weeks of watching, 3 weeks of learning, 3 weeks of letting everyone believe she was nothing. Phase 1 was complete. The combat arena was built like a giant bowl carved into the ground. Stone seats rose up in circles around a flat sand floor where cadets would fight. On the morning of the first trial, every seat was filled. 200 cadets had entered the tournament. Only 32 would pass. The rest would be sent to other divisions or removed from the academy entirely. Stood in the waiting area beneath the arena. She could hear the crowd above her. She could feel the vibration of thousands of feet stamping in anticipation. Her first opponent was unnamed. He had 4 arms and 20 years of combat training. The betting pools said would last 12 seconds against him. She stretched slowly and focused her breathing. "Cadet Morgan," an official called, "You are next." She walked up the stone ramp and into the light. The crowd noise hit her like a wave. She could see sitting in the front row with his friends. They were already laughing. She could see Commandant in his observation box, watching with those ancient eyes. She could see Senna in the stands, her face unreadable. Was already in the arena. He was bouncing on his feet and rolling all 4 shoulders. He was grinning. "Little human," he called across the sand, "I will try to make this quick, out of respect for your courage." Said nothing. She walked to her starting position and stood perfectly still. Her eyes were moving, but the rest of her body was like a statue. The starting tone sounded. Charged were not the fastest species, but they were fast enough. He crossed the distance between them in 3 seconds. His upper arms were already swinging. His lower arms were reaching to grab. Was not there. She had moved to the left at the last possible moment. It was a small movement, just enough to take her out of his path. Arms hit empty air. He stumbled past her and spun around. The crowd went quiet. "What are you doing?" demanded. "Fight me." Did not answer. She waited. He attacked again, and again, and again. Each time moved just enough to avoid him. She never tried to hit back. She never ran away. She just kept dodging by the smallest possible distance. 5 minutes passed. Was breathing hard. Sweat was running down his blue skin. His movements were getting slower and less accurate, had not broken a sweat. "Stop running," he snarled. "No." He roared and threw everything he had at her, all four arms working together in a pattern designed to catch any opponent from any angle. Moved. The arena recordings would be studied for years afterward. In 1.5 seconds, she executed 7 precise movements. She pushed his primary arm into the path of his secondary arm. She dropped under his grab and struck a nerve point behind his knee. She used his own weight to spin him off balance. When he hit the ground, she was standing over him with her foot positioned at his throat. The arena was silent. "Yield conditions met?" asked, looking up at the judges. The head judge stared at his instruments. "Confirmed. Victory to Cadet Morgan." She offered her hand. He stared at it, then at her, then took it. She helped him stand. "How?" he whispered. "Your species leads with the upper right arm 67% of the time. When tired, you drop your guard by 4 centimeters. You signal every attack with your shoulder." Released his hand. "I had 3 weeks to watch." She walked out while the crowd erupted behind her. Her second match was against a named. Everyone knew that fighting was almost impossible. They could read your thoughts. They knew what you were going to do before you did it. 1 in 47 seconds. She did it by not thinking at all. She had trained for 6 years to act without conscious thought. Her body moved on pure reflex, responding to what she saw without any mental planning. Could not read intentions that did not exist. He had never faced an enemy whose mind was completely empty. When he went down, holding his ribs where she had landed 3 precise strikes, the arena was buzzing with a new kind of energy. The human was not a joke anymore. Senna found in their room that evening. They sat down and stared at her roommate with new eyes. "How did you block your thoughts from?" "I did not block them, I just did not have any." "That is impossible." Shook her head. "If you train a response enough times, it becomes automatic, like breathing. You do not think about breathing, you just breathe." She flexed her fingers, testing for soreness. "I spent 6 years training until fighting became the same." 6 years. Senna repeated the word slowly. "You planned this for 6 years." "Humans do not live as long as most species. We cannot waste time." "But why? Why go through all of this?" His expression changed slightly. For just a moment, something fierce and bright showed through her calm surface. "Because they said we could not." Round 3 was against. The entire galaxy was watching. News networks that had never covered the Academy before were broadcasting live. The who had mocked the human for 3 weeks was about to face her in combat. Entered the arena first. He was not laughing anymore. He had spent 2 days studying her matches. He had consulted with trainers and strategists. He understood now that this was not a game. Walked in behind him. She looked tiny next to his massive form. She had refused to wear armor. Her uniform was the same simple outfit she always wore. Commandant leaned forward in his seat. The starting tone sounded. Did not charge. He had learned from. Instead, he advanced slowly with his arms spread wide, cutting off angles of escape. His natural armor covered his vital areas. His strength could crush steel. In a long fight, he was unbeatable. Watched him come. She did not move. She did not speak. She analyzed and calculated and waited. When he reached striking distance, he feinted left and struck right. It was a classic move. Dropped straight down and drove her fist into the gap between his armor plates at the knee. It was a target no bigger than her fist. She hit it perfectly. Stumbled but did not fall. He stamped down where she had been. She was already behind him. The next 5 minutes were a lesson in a new kind of warfare. Had strength and armor and reach. Had none of these things. What she had was knowledge. She knew every blind spot in vision. She knew every weak point in their armor. She knew that their nerves processed pain slowly, which meant they often did not react to injuries until it was too late. She hit him 17 times. None of the strikes were powerful, but each one targeted something vital. The cumulative effect was devastating. By the 8th minute, was on his knees. His massive body was shaking with pain and exhaustion. Stood before him, unmarked and calm. "Yield," she said. The word hung in the air. I had never yielded to a human. It seemed impossible. Looked up at her. He saw no triumph in her face, no satisfaction, just patience and a quiet kind of respect. "How?" he asked. "You trained to fight enemies. I trained to fight you." Something changed in his expression. The arrogance cracked and fell away. What remained was the soul of a warrior who recognized when he had been fairly beaten. "I yield." Offered her hand. He took it. She helped him stand. "You have made a fool of me," he said quietly. "No, I have shown you what you could not see. There is a difference." She walked away while the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The human cadet was no longer a joke. She was something nobody had expected. She was a champion. The days after defeating were strange for. The mockery had stopped completely. Now when she walked through the academy corridors, cadets moved out of her way. They watched her with a mixture of confusion and something that looked like fear. Nobody knew what to make of her anymore. Round 4 of the combat trials came quickly. Her opponent was a tactical specialist named. He was older than and more experienced. He had studied previous matches and developed what he believed was a counter-strategy. It did not matter. Defeated him in 2 minutes using the same empty mind technique. When his telepathic abilities found nothing to read, he panicked. Panic led to mistakes. Mistakes led to defeat. Round 5 was against a champion named. He was the best 4-armed fighter in the academy. He had won 60 consecutive matches before facing. His record ended at 60. Took him apart with the same patient precision she had shown in every fight. She knew his patterns. She knew his weaknesses. She knew exactly how his species moved and thought and fought. She had spent 6 years learning. When he fell, the arena was not surprised anymore. They were expecting it. The final round was announced on the morning of the 7th day. Would face one opponent for the championship. The winner would graduate at the top of the combat division. The loser would still graduate but without the honor. Her opponent was a human. His name was Daniel Wright. He had entered the academy 3 years before through the same program. Unlike her, he had chosen a different path. He had modified his body with machines, metal bones, enhanced muscles, computer chips in his brain that made him faster and stronger than any natural human. When they faced each other across the arena, Daniel looked confused. "I did not know there were 2 of us," he said. "There are more than you think," replied. "We just fight differently. I fight to win." "So do I, but I remember why." The starting tone sounded. Daniel was fast. His modifications made him nearly as quick as a. His enhanced strength let him hit like a. He was everything a human could become with enough technology. But had studied those modifications too. She knew the lag time between his brain and his mechanical parts. She knew the spots where machine met flesh. She knew the limitations that the engineers had never been able to solve. The match lasted 11 minutes. It was the longest final in Academy history. 2 humans fighting with completely different philosophies. Daniel represented adaptation, becoming like the stronger species, changing yourself to fit their standards. Represented something else, refusing to change, finding strength in what you already were. In the end, her knowledge defeated his enhancements. She triggered a feedback loop in his neural implants that locked his muscles for 3 critical seconds. When he could move again, she had already won. She knelt beside him and deactivated the malfunctioning device causing his pain. "You could have been more," she said softly. "You did not have to change what you were." He looked up at her, "But they said we were not enough." "They were wrong." She stood and offered her hand. They have always been wrong. The graduation ceremony was held 1 week later. 31 cadets stood in the Grand Hall wearing the uniforms of coalition combat specialists. Representatives from a dozen worlds watched through holographic projections. It was the most watched ceremony in Academy history. Was not standing with the others. She was standing alone at the front of the hall. Her graduation had been delayed. Commandant faced the assembled cadets and guests. His ancient face showed no emotion. In 200 years, this academy has never faced a situation like the one before us today. A cadet has completed the combat trials with a perfect record. 6 matches, 6 victories, 4 different species defeated. He paused. That same cadet has been accused of cheating. A murmur swept through the crowd. The accusation comes from the families of defeated cadets. They claim that no natural human could achieve such results. They demand investigation and disqualification. His expression did not change. May I know the specific charges? Nodded, hidden drugs, illegal brain modifications, pre-programmed combat software, bribery, sabotage. He paused again. The list is long. And the evidence? None. The accusers claim that the lack of evidence proves how sophisticated the cheating was. Stepped forward from the graduated cadets. His massive form drew every eye. Commandant, I request permission to speak. Nodded. Walked to the center of the hall. He turned to face the holographic representatives from the Coalition Council. I mocked this human. I believed she did not belong here. I was one of those she defeated. His deep voice filled the hall. And I am here to tell you that she did not cheat. The council members exchanged glances. I have watched our match 100 times. Every movement, every strike, every decision she made. There is no technology. There is no enhancement. Turn to look at. There is only preparation that we thought was impossible because we could not imagine doing it ourselves. Stepped forward. I agree. She beat me through strategy and training, nothing more. Came next. She trained her mind beyond conscious thought. My people have tried to achieve this for centuries. She did it through practice alone. One by one, his opponents spoke. Each one confirmed what they had experienced. Each one that they had lost to skill, not cheating. The council conferred among themselves. Finally, the senior member spoke. She was an ancient matriarch with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. The testimony is compelling. However, the accusations are serious. We cannot dismiss them without formal investigation. Then investigate, said, her voice carried across the hall. Scan my body, test my blood, examine my brain. I will submit to anything you require. That is not standard procedure. Neither is a human winning the combat trials. The investigation took 3 days. Medical scans, psychological tests, analysis of every match recording. The results were clear. Had no modifications, no drugs, no hidden technology. Her body was completely natural human. What they did find was her research. Over 6,000 pages of handwritten analysis, combat styles of every species, psychological profiles of every instructor, training logs going back 6 years. 6 years of preparation for one moment. The council reconvened on the 4th day. The investigation is complete, the matriarch announced. We find no evidence of cheating. Cadet Morgan's achievements are legitimate. Relief passed through the hall. Its expression finally softened. Furthermore, the matriarch continued, the council wishes to make a statement. She stood to her full height. For 200 years, we have made assumptions about different species. We have assigned roles based on physical traits. We have dismissed some races as unsuitable for certain positions. We were wrong. She turned to face the entire hall. Cadet Morgan has shown that determination can overcome any disadvantage. She has proven that the spirit of a warrior is not measured in size or strength. She has challenged everything we believed about potential. The matriarch looked directly at. Let it be known throughout the coalition that the combat track is now open to any species. Let it be known that the era of assumptions is over. And let it be known that this change was brought about by one human who refused to accept limitations. Finally, allowed herself to smile. I did not do this alone, she said. Every human who came before me who tried and failed and was dismissed, they are part of this too. Then honor them by what you do next. Looked at the insignia being presented to her. Combat Specialist, First Class, the first human to ever earn it. She had proven something, but she knew this was only the beginning. The real work was still ahead. 6 months passed after graduation. Stood on the bridge of a coalition warship called the Eternal Horizon. She was no longer a cadet. The insignia on her collar marked her as Combat Operations Officer. She was the first human to ever hold this position on a mixed-species crew. The ship was massive. It carried 300 crew members from 12 different worlds, worked alongside, served beside species that had once been their enemies. The coalition had united them all under one flag. Admiral commanded the vessel. He was nearly as large as but much older. His armor plates were from decades of battle. He had watched matches at the academy and requested her specifically for his crew. Officer Morgan said, his deep voice carried easily across the bridge. We have received a distress signal from the mining colony on 3. Unknown hostile forces have attacked. The garrison is not responding. Studied the tactical display. The colony was in a remote sector far from any major fleet. Whatever was happening there, they would have to handle it alone. I recommend approaching through the asteroid field, she said. It will slow us down but hide our presence. That adds 4 hours to our arrival. The colonists may not have 4 hours. They definitely will not survive if we rush in and get destroyed. Considered this. Around him, the crew watched the exchange. The human was still new on board. Many of them wondered if she really deserved her position. Explain your reasoning, the admiral said. The garrison had 40 trained soldiers. Whatever defeated them did it quickly. That means either superior numbers or superior technology. A direct approach gives the enemy every advantage. Highlighted points on the display. The asteroid field provides cover and multiple insertion angles. It limits their ability to coordinate against us. You assume they have not anticipated this. I assume they have not met anyone willing to take the harder path. Met his eyes. Humans learned long ago that sometimes the slower approach wins the race. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. Very well. Helm, set course through the asteroid field. Officer Morgan, prepare your ground team. 3 hours later, led a squad through the vacuum of space. They jumped from asteroid to asteroid toward the silent colony. Her team included and another human named Lisa Hayes. Lisa had followed path through the academy and graduated 1 year after her. Scanning the colony now, Lisa reported through their communication channel. I am reading about 60 life signs. Most are in the central habitat. A second group is near the mining facility. Hostile signatures. None visible, but there is interference, could be jamming. Considered the situation. The colonists were alive. That was good. But the lack of enemy readings was troubling. Either the attackers had left or they were hidden. We split up, she decided. Team 1 takes the central habitat. Team 2 goes to the mining facility. No shooting unless necessary. We need information first. The team leader, a veteran named, raised an objection. Standard procedure calls for concentrated force in unknown situations. Standard procedure assumes we know what we are facing. We do not. Checked her equipment. I want eyes on both locations. Fell silent. He had seen matches. He knew she did not make careless decisions. Team 1 reached the habitat first. What they found changed everything. The colonists were alive and unharmed. They were also terrified. not of enemy attack but of something else entirely. It came from the deep mine, the colony administrator explained. Her voice was shaking. We thought it was just rock, but when we broke through the last layer there was a chamber. Something was inside. Something. A machine. Ancient, not coalition technology, not anything we have seen before. Felt a chill run through her. Pre-coalition artifacts were rare. Most were harmless remains of dead civilizations. Some were extremely dangerous. "Show me," she said. The chamber was deep underground. Went alone despite her team's objections. If something went wrong, she wanted to limit casualties. The elevator descended for a long time. When the doors finally opened, stepped out into a cavern larger than the entire ship. Her breath caught in her throat. The machine filled the space like a sleeping giant. It was beautiful in a way that words could not describe. Flowing curves and impossible shapes. Lights pulsing inside it like a heartbeat. It looked alive. And then it spoke. Not with sound. The voice appeared directly in her mind. Concepts and impressions that bypassed language entirely. "You are small," the presence observed. "Fragile, mortal, yet you do not run." Steadied herself. "Should I?" "Most do. The others fled when they woke me. They called for help and abandoned their home." "I am not most." Something like amusement rippled through her consciousness. "No, you are not. I have watched your journey, little one. The trials, the accusations, the victories against impossible odds. You are interesting." "What are you?" "I am a remnant, a guardian. I was placed here before your species learned to walk. My creators knew others would come one day. They wanted to leave a message." "What message?" The presence expanded. Saw images that spanned thousands of years. Civilizations rising and falling. Species evolving and dying. The endless cycle of the galaxy turning through ages of light and darkness. "The message is this," the presence said. "Size does not determine worth. Strength does not determine destiny. The smallest spark can light the darkest void if it burns bright enough." Understood. Somehow she understood completely. "You were waiting," she said, "waiting for someone who would not run." "I was waiting for someone who would listen. My creators were a small species like yours. The great empires of their time dismissed them, but they endured, they built, they dreamed. When the empires fell, they remained." "What happened to them?" "They moved on, to places beyond this galaxy, beyond this dimension. But they left me here as proof of what they achieved, as inspiration for those who would come after." The presence focused more intensely on. "You will face many challenges ahead. Your people will struggle to find their place among the stars. Remember this moment. Remember that the small and dismissed can become builders of eternity." The machine began to pulse faster, sensed something changing. The ancient guardian was preparing to leave. "Wait," she said, "I have more questions." "You always will. That is what makes you capable of finding answers." One final thought pressed into her mind. "Tell your people this. They are not a joke. They have never been a joke. They are the universe's most profound surprise." The light faded. The presence. When blinked, the machine was dark and still. Whatever intelligence had lived inside it was gone. She stood alone in the vast chamber for a long time. Then she turned and walked back to the elevator. Her team was waiting above. Their weapons were drawn and their faces showed concern. "Officer Morgan," Lisa said, "you were down there for 2 hours. We almost came after you." 2 hours, it had felt like minutes. "The situation is secure," said. "There is no hostile force." She looked back at the elevator. "What we found is something else entirely." She contacted the ship. "Admiral, I need to deliver this report in person. Some things cannot be transmitted." That evening, back aboard the Eternal Horizon, sat in her quarters and began to write. Not an official report. A letter to Earth, to her family, to her species, to everyone who had ever been told they were not enough. She wrote about the ancient machine. about the small species that had changed everything, about the message they had left across the ages. And she wrote about what came next. Because the combat trials were just the beginning, the real work of proving that humans belonged among the stars would take generations, but it had to start somewhere. It had to start with someone willing to be laughed at and dismissed and underestimated. Sealed the letter and sent it toward Earth. Then she looked out the window at the stars streaming past. The universe was vast, full of species that were bigger and stronger and older than humanity, full of challenges that seemed impossible. But she had learned something in that chamber, something that changed everything. The small could become great. The dismissed could become legendary. And sometimes, the biggest joke turned out to be no joke at all. 5 years had passed since found the ancient machine on 3. In that time, everything had changed. She stood now on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship Unity. Through the massive windows, she could see the fleet spread out across the darkness. 200 ships from 50 worlds, the largest gathering of Coalition forces in a century. And they were preparing for war. A species called that had emerged from the dark regions beyond charted space. They were conquerors. They had destroyed 17 worlds in 6 months. Their technology was superior. Their numbers were endless. The Coalition had tried diplomacy. They had responded by destroying the diplomatic vessel and everyone on board. Was now a commander, the youngest in Coalition history, the first human to hold flag rank. Her reputation had grown with each passing year. The cadet who had been a joke was now one of the most respected officers in the fleet. Admiral was still her commanding officer. He had refused 3 promotions because he wanted to keep serving with her. His respect for her had only deepened over time. "The fleet will arrive in 6 hours," he said as she entered the command center. "They outnumber us 3 to 1. Their weapons are more powerful, their ships are faster." He paused. "The Council believes this is our last stand." Studied the tactical display. The enemy fleet was massive, thousands of ships moving in perfect formation. They looked unstoppable. "What do you recommend?" asked. "Something they will not expect." She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, just like she had spent years preparing for the academy. Knowledge was her weapon. Understanding was her shield. "The fight in rigid formations," she explained. "Every ship has its position. Every commander follows orders exactly. This makes them efficient but predictable." She highlighted several points on the display. "They have never faced an enemy that refuses to fight conventionally. We cannot match their strength in direct combat. Then we do not fight directly." Her plan was unconventional, dangerous. It went against every principle of fleet warfare that the Coalition had developed over centuries. When she finished explaining, the command staff was silent. Spoke first. "This could result in the destruction of our entire fleet. Fighting their way guarantees destruction. Fighting our way gives us a chance. The Council will never approve this." "Then do not ask them," met his eyes. "You are the Admiral, this is your decision." Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the human cadet he had first seen fighting in the academy arena. The small being who had defeated opponents 3 times her size through preparation and determination. He thought about everything she had accomplished since then. "Do it," he said. The next 5 hours were chaos. Ships moved into positions that made no tactical sense. Formations dissolved and reformed in patterns that looked random. The crew members who understood the plan worked frantically. Those who did not understand trusted their commanders. When the fleet finally arrived, they found something unexpected. The Coalition ships were not in battle formation. They were scattered across an asteroid field in small groups. Some appeared to be hiding. Others were drifting without power. It looked like the fleet had already given up. The commander saw easy prey. He ordered his ships to spread out and hunt down the survivors. His perfect formation began to break apart as vessels moved to engage individual targets. That was exactly what wanted. Now, she said. The scattered coalition ships came alive, power systems activated, weapons charged, but they did not attack the vessels closest to them. Instead, they targeted the gaps between enemy ships, the spaces where the formation had broken. Missiles streamed through the darkness, not aimed at hulls but at the empty space between vessels. When they detonated, they released clouds of electromagnetic disruption that severed communications and scrambled sensors. Suddenly, the fleet was blind. Each ship was alone, cut off from command, unable to see friend or enemy. Their perfect coordination was gone. And that was when the real attack began. Coalition ships emerged from the asteroid field where they had been hiding. They struck the isolated vessels from angles that should have been impossible. Small groups worked together with flexibility that the rigid could not match. Commanded from the Unity, her voice calm as she directed dozens of simultaneous engagements. She had studied tactics for months. She knew how each ship type would react when isolated. She knew exactly how long it would take them to restore communications. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the fleet was destroyed. Not every ship, not completely, but enough. Their invasion was broken. The coalition had lost 60 ships. The had lost 800. News of the victory spread across the galaxy. Within days, everyone knew the name of the human commander who had turned certain defeat into triumph. She became a symbol of something larger than herself. 3 months later, stood before the Coalition Council in their great chamber. Representatives from every member world watched as the most powerful beings in the galaxy addressed a human. Commander Morgan, the matriarch said, the same one who had overseen graduation years before. You have done what military experts said was impossible. You have saved the coalition from destruction. The council wishes to offer you a position of honor, Supreme Commander of all coalition forces. It was the highest military rank in existence. No human had ever been considered for it. Few had ever even dreamed of it. Bowed her head. I am honored, but I must decline. The chamber went silent. Explain, the matriarch said. The coalition does not need one supreme commander. It needs something better. Looked around the chamber at the faces of 100 species. It needs to believe that anyone can achieve anything, that position and power are earned through merit, that the smallest species can stand equal to the largest. She paused. If I take this position, I become an exception, a special human who succeeded despite her species. I do not want to be an exception. I want to be proof that there are no exceptions, that every being in this coalition has the same potential. The matriarch studied her for a long moment. What do you want instead? I want to teach. I want to return to the academy and train the next generation, not just humans, everyone. I want to show them what I learned, that preparation defeats strength, that determination defeats size, that the only real limits are the ones we accept. The council conferred among themselves. Finally, the matriarch spoke again. The council grants your request. You will be named Commandant of the Galactic Military Academy, the first human to hold this position. A rare smile crossed her ancient face. We expect great things from your students. 1 year later stood before a new class of cadets. They came from 30 different worlds. Some were large, some were small. Some had natural advantages, others had none. In the front row sat a human girl barely 5 feet tall. She looked terrified. The cadets around her were giants by comparison. Walked over and stood before her. What is your name? Amy Porter, the girl whispered. Cadet Amy Porter. Why are you here, Cadet Porter? Amy swallowed hard. Because I want to prove that humans can be warriors too. Smiled. It was the same smile she had worn years ago when had threatened her in the training yard. The smile of someone who knew something that others did not. "Look around this room," said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Some of you are strong. Some of you are fast. Some of you can read minds or survive in vacuum or crush steel with your bare hands." She paused. "None of that matters." The cadets shifted uncomfortably. "What matters is what you are willing to do, how hard you are willing to work, how much you are willing to learn. The galaxy does not care about your advantages, it cares about your determination." Looked at Amy Porter. "I was once told that humans were a joke, that we did not belong among warriors, that we were too small and weak and fragile to compete." Her eyes swept across the room. "I proved them wrong, not because I was special, because I refused to accept their limits." She walked back to the front of the room. "You will all face doubt. You will face mockery. You will face moments when giving up seems easier than going forward. In those moments, remember this. The smallest spark can light the darkest void. The tortoise can beat the hare, and the beings others dismiss as jokes can become the greatest warriors the galaxy has ever seen." Looked out at the sea of faces, future commanders, future heroes, future proof that potential had no limits. "Welcome to the academy," she said. "Your training begins now." And somewhere in the front row, a small human girl straightened her spine and began to believe that anything was possible. The legacy continued.